Hi there, this is a video about operations with integers. Let's first talk about what integers are. Integers are counting numbers 0 and their opposites. And by opposites, I mean that those are negatives, okay? So if I wanted to write out the integer number system, I would do ... -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, ... meaning that we can go forever and ever in this direction to the right in all positive numbers and forever to the left in all negative numbers, okay? So these are our integers. And basically we're operating with positive and negative numbers, all right? That's the idea. So we're going to look at how we add, subtract, multiply, and divide these kinds of numbers. First ones I want to talk about are adding and subtracting. Okay, the first example that I have is 3 plus -2, all right? Whenever we are adding a negative, I often think of this and rewrite it as just 3 minus that number, okay? So these two things mean the same thing. So if you see adding a negative number, that's the same thing as subtracting, and we can evaluate this and we're just going to get the value of 1. Now you can look at a number line here, put 0 here. If we have a positive number, that means that we're going to go to the right. If we have a negative number, that means we're going to go to the left. And so what I do is I count over 3. I start with my number on the left, then I'm going to count to the right 3 units and stop there at +3. And then I'm going to use -2 and count back 2 units because we're going backwards because that's a negative value and we arrive at the value of 1. Okay, and that's how we would use a number line for something like that. Let's also look at another example like 5 plus -8. Now, one thing that we're realizing here is that, if we wanted to rewrite this, we could rewrite this as just simply 5 minus 8. Okay, and one of the things that we want to do is, think about it like this. Like the number 5 is a little bit smaller than just the value of 8. So because 8 is larger than 5, I know that my answer is going to be negative. All right, and so one thing that you can do is you can switch this around and you can do 8 minus 5, and that's going to give you 3. So when your negative number is larger than your positive number, all right, in that sense, like if you look at just the value of 8 and 5, 8 is larger, and if you're subtracting that from 8, then you can just do this math over here, get that that's 3, and know that this is going to be -3. Okay. You can also use a number line, okay? And you can say, all right, here's 0. I'm going to count over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right? And then we're going to go count to the left 8. So let me make a few more tick marks here. So if we go over to the right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right, that's my positive number, so we're going to the right. If we then look at -8, and that's going to go to the left, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's going to land us at -3, and that's what we get for our answer, okay? However you want to look at it, that's fine. Another example is where you have a negative number out here, and then you're adding a positive number to that. All right, and one thing that you can do is that you can use the commutative property and reorder things. So I could rewrite this as 7 plus -3 and do that, so then maybe you don't like the way that looks and you can do 7 minus 3, and that's going to give you a value of 4. Again, however you want to look at it, but that's one thing that you can do. You can still all use a number line, all right? If this is 0, and I count to the left 3, here's -3, all right? So if that's my negative number, we go to the left 3, 1, 2, 3. And then my other number is +7, means we're going to move 7 units to the right. And then let's count that over. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all right? And that's going to land us at 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and that's our answer for that. That's how we get 4. So it doesn't matter how you look at it, as long as you can arrive at the right answer. Another one that we have is if we're adding 2 negative numbers, okay? So if we're adding 2 negative numbers, I like to just think of, well, what if we just add two positive numbers? All right, 2 plus 3 is going to give us a total value of 5. Now, if I add two negative numbers, because they're both negative, I'm going to get negative 5. All right, and so let's look at a number line here for this. All right, let's put 0 here. The first number is negative 2, so we're going to go to the left 2 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so let's go to the left 2 units, so go over 1, 2, and then because my second number is still a negative, then that means I want to add another 3 to that and go to the left in that direction, and that lands us at negative 5, and that's how we get that, all right? Another example is that if you are subtracting a negative number, now one thing that we always want to think about is that the opposite of a negative number is simply just a positive. So the first step that you would do in any situation is change this to a plus sign and bring your number down. And we can easily do 4 plus 2, and that's going to give us a value of 6. Okay? One thing that my teachers used to do when we had 4 minus negative 2, if we were subtracting a negative, we would simply just put addition signs when I saw that. And this only happens when the negatives are right next to each other. Because if I look at another example and I say negative 4 minus a negative 2, all right, when you see this, the only time that you change these signs is when they're directly next to each other, okay? And so what I'm going to do is drop down my negative 4 and change this to a plus 2. So now you have negative 4 plus 2. And so from here, you can, you can write this a number of ways. You can rewrite this as 2 plus negative 4. You can even write this as 2 minus 4. All right, all three of these things represent the same thing, okay? And, we're going to get a value of negative 2 out of that, all right? So one thing that we want to do is we want to, start at 0, count over to the left 4, all right? Here's negative 4. All right, and we're going to go to the left because, it's negative, all right? And then if that means we're going to go 2 units to the right, 1, 2, where do we land? That's going to be at negative 2, and that's what we get as our answer. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing integers. So as long as you understand the concept of multiplication and division, this part's pretty easy. What I want to do is draw a triangle. And every time that I'm dealing with positive and negative numbers, if I'm multiplying and dividing them, I draw this picture, all right? It means I've got 2 negatives in the bottom and a positive up top, all right? And what I want to do is talk about you've got 3 scenarios here, all right, if you're dealing with positive and negative numbers. All right, if your first number is a negative number and you're multiplying that by a positive number, then what you're going to get is a negative, okay? And how I do that is I look over here and I say, all right, if I've got a negative times a positive, what are we left over with, all right? And that's a negative. So if you draw this on your paper and you cover up these 2 symbols, you look at what's left over, and that's going to be the result, all right? Similarly, okay, if we did, say, a positive times a negative, all right, that's going to give us a negative, all right? And if I do that over here, and I say, all right, if I'm doing a positive times a negative, then what's left over? Okay, so if you cover that part up, then you see what's left over, and that's a negative. All right, and that's how we can determine that. Okay, if we do, say, a negative times a negative, then we're going to get a positive. All right, so if negative times a negative, I cover that part up. What's left over in my picture is a positive, and that's how we do that. Now, the same thing is going to work with division. All right. If I were to take a negative and divide it by a positive, we're going to get a negative. If I take a positive and divide it by a negative, we're going to get a negative. And if I take a negative and divide that by a negative, then that's going to give us a positive. All right. So however you want to do to remember that, that's the idea. All right. So let's look at a couple of examples. First one I want to do is 3 times negative 2. Now, what I want to think about is this, all right? If I have a positive times a negative, the result is going to be negative, all right? So I really just want to look at 3 times 2, all right? If I just look at 3 times 2, that gives me a positive 6, all right? But because of our rule here, because we are operating with positive and negative numbers, I know that my final answer is going to be a negative 6. So this is what we think of, all right? But then this is our answer to our problem, okay? And that's what we want to make sure that we do, all right? That's the important part. On my next example, I want to take the number -4 and multiply it by -6. All right, if I take -4 and multiply it by -6, I want to think of just 4 times 6. 4 times 6 is going to give us 24, okay? But because we're taking a negative times a negative, and that gives us a positive, all right, then I just want to know that my answer is going to be 24, and that's my answer when we evaluate that. If we switch over to division, okay, I got to know that I've got 28 divided by a -7. All right, so if I take a positive divided by a negative, that's going to give me a negative. All right, and so I want to just think of, all right, what's 28 divided by 7? All right, that's going to give me 4. But because my answer is supposed to be negative, because I have this -7 down here, then my final answer is going to be -4. All right, and that's how I'm thinking of doing these problems. Okay, on this last one here, if I've got a negative divided by a negative, all right, I just want to think about that. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, all right? So we can just think of, all right, think of 32 divided by 2, which gives us a value of 16, all right? And because my answer is supposed to be positive, I can just leave that, and that's my answer, okay? So that's the idea on how to do these. It takes a lot of practice, so I encourage you to do as many problems of these as you can, because this is the essence of algebra, all right? We have to be able to do this, because when we move on, all right, in math, all right, math is going to build on itself, so we got to remember how to operate with positive and negative numbers, because you're going to see that for the remainder of your math career. Please reach out if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.